What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Rebel Radio. I'm your host, Josh Levine. I got two very special guests in studio with me today, Adam 12 and Brian Tarney. They're the founders of the Cloak and Dagger Festival here in Los Angeles. It's actually happening this weekend as we speak. Cloak and Dagger is kind of a spin-off of the Cloak and Dagger Club, which is sort of a goth club, although if you know Adam 12, he doesn't exactly stick to a format. He kind of plays what he loves and makes you love it too. But it's like a lot of Adam's projects, comes with a lot of rules. It's a members-only club. He makes you wear all black and there's no photos allowed. And we talk a little bit about why it's a good idea to create rules for people and really guide the experience and not necessarily play by the idea that the customer's always right or the customer always knows what they want. And we also talk a lot about what it means to create an immersive entertainment experience for people, and they got some crazy shit happening down at Cloak and Dagger. So I hope you enjoy the interview. We'll get into it right after our EDM.com track of the week. That was the EDM.com track of the week. That was 1 and 2 with Vivere. If you like that, get over to EDM.com and check out more great music. And right now, let's get into the interview with Adam 12 and Brian Tarney. I talked about this with somebody the other day who was like 40s, hip hop fan, and I'm excited to hear your story as well and how it all fits together. But just the idea, there was a kid in the room who was 27, and like the idea that at one time being a hip hop fan was it set you apart. It was kind of a fringe thing. Forget about being a white hip hop fan, but just being a hip hop fan, period.
Oh yeah.
Was not the norm, and most of the kids in your high school or whatever couldn't relate to that and didn't even know about it.
My high school was like Shane, Mooney, Justin. It was Shane, Justin, this kid Morgan, who was Popcorn. Ever heard of that dude? He was down with Breeze. Do you remember Breeze? Yeah. Not Breed.
Yeah.
Breeze. Breeze went to our high school. And two other dudes.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah.
There was and Kevin Hicks. You know Kevin? But that was it. In my high school, I wore tracksuits every day, and people were like, "What the fuck are you?"
Yeah.
I got called some fucked up names too.
You're like a weirdo.
I was Wigger.
Yeah.
Wigger. Yeah.
I mean, but not joking. It was gnarly in those
not
days.
Not in a Michael Rappaport way.
No, not in a Michael Rappaport way. But it was. You're right. I mean, it was. That was late '80s, but even in all the early '90s, it's still now. That weird, the goth people don't understand the hip hop side of me and vice versa. It still kind of exists. For sure. But back then, because I never dressed goth, but I would go to goth clubs, but I'd be wearing 555 Soul or something, and they were like, "What the fuck are you doing here, dude?"
So my friends and I in high school, we all dressed preppy. We were into hip hop but we were into everything.
Sure.
Kind of the same kind of experience. But we went in '88 to Depeche Mode, so Music for the Masses show.
Wow.
And I had never been around other Depeche Mode fans. It was just me and my friends, and we liked all kind of different shit. And we walk in and everyone's in black, and we're like,
the preppy dudes.
We just I didn't know this whole world existed.
Right.
It was just a foreign.
The whole crowd. I assumed people were still kind of doing the 80s hypercolor, even the Depeche Mode. Well, I guess Music for the Masses probably was a little later. A little later, yeah. Yeah, that was a couple years after Black Celebration, so that would be the...
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
That would have been cool.
That show must have been awesome.
Oh, it was incredible. was incredible. But you know, but at the time it was like weird to cross cultures. Like
Sure.
that, right? It was weird for a bunch of preppy white kids to be into hip hop. It was weird for hip hop fans to also like Depeche Mode. Like that was just.
Which is so funny now because you like, I've been particularly picking up a lot of. I've been DJing a regular like night where I'm playing a lot of like 80s hits and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like I've been picking up a lot of those like Warner Brothers 12-inch promos and whatnot, and seeing like you start to see that regardless of whether it was a hip hop or a synth pop or like just a pop thing like pop, Paul Simon, whatever, everybody had the same batch of like 10 remixers.
Sure.
Everybody had the same group of producers that just like worked on the track, and to them they didn't care. It was just like, we're going to give it that like that dance treatment or whatever. And but I think in the 80s the perspective was way different, because in the 90s, once like Body Count happened and George Bush was like talking about that shit and like, you know, like press conferences and whatnot, like that's when I think there was more of a backlash, and people were like, you were like particularly weird for being like you know, subversive, for being into hip hop for a while, rather than it just being, because hip hop was sort of a like fun party genre that came out of like disco and funk and all that.
Yeah.
At least in the like very early 80s. So I think it had changed pretty remarkably by that point.
Well, it's like if you watch the Defiant ones, right? And you know, I kind of forgot because you know, now Jimmy's like, you know, he's a headphone guy, whatever. But you know, it was a big.
Yeah, he was like the guy that was going out there and
he was like
going to bat for it.
risk
Yeah.
on this music that was like under scrutiny by the FBI and the DEA and
Yeah.
all this stuff, right? And
Yeah.
that was a big deal for them. And you know, remember Warner Brothers had to like pull out of it because of you know, Cop Killer and all this shit. You know, it's just such a weird world now that like none of that matters.
No, none of that matters anymore.
Right. And it's like I think there's our generation that, you know, how we got to this point is really meaningful to us. But for the new generation, like all that is erased.
Kids don't even get to go through awkward phases anymore.
Right.
They just go on the internet and find out what's cool. Like we had to go like trial by fire and do stupid shit and like, you know, like have our bad like awkward moments and listen to something that was not cool and get schooled by it by the cool kids or whatever. You know, like that shit doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I just had that same conversation the other day where, like, when you look around, fortunately I get to travel a lot, and everywhere we go looks the same. Mm-hmm. And everyone in those cities, give or take, looks the same. Yeah. So there's no identity to any cities anymore. You know, you go to the east side of any city, it's like the cool coffee place. Right. You know, it's all because they just go online and see what everybody else is doing and then recreate it the same way that people do it with fashion and makeup and style and like music. And when we were talking about how cool it was when you had to figure it out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, and everybody had their own thing going on, and how important that was to like the development of people. You know, how people developed into being individuals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where like.
So what do you guys see? Because I know you guys are out, you know, at your clubs. You're definitely out more than I am because I sit at home with my kid and think about the old days. But but like, what do you see in the new generation? Like, how is it different? I know last time we were here, so first of all, thank you for coming back.
Thanks for having me back.
That's exciting. I had a great time the last time and learned so much about you, even though we've known each other for 20 plus years. But so I'm excited to hear kind of where it's all going and all that. But we talked last time about just how camera culture was changing the club scene, right? And bottle service was changing the club scene. And I think, you know, you've done a great job creating environments that are in your vision to maybe, I don't want to say combat that, but to kind of create an experience for people even in that world. But how are people different? How is this younger generation different than like what we're used to?
In clubs that I do, or in clubs in general?
Or just what you see out there. like we're talking about this, like where the awkward phase is gone, the blending of genres or the skipping genres. Like, so I'm just curious, like what effects do you see?
There's so many. I mean, you know, the initial, I think the most prevalent effect, in my opinion, well, there's a few, but one of them is, you know, what Brian was talking about earlier about, it relates to there not being an awkward phase for anybody, where like everywhere you go, you have to be on guard that somebody's taking a picture or a video of you. So even kids that are like 5 are like cooler than I ever was, because they have access to,
because you know what's cool.
What's cool, or what people perceive to be as cool. So like, I go, when I DJ just like straight up clubs, you know, I think the first thing I notice is how boys aren't dancing with girls. No one's really even dancing. There's no dance floor. That's actually probably the first thing you notice is over the last 10 years, the dance floor has just kind of disappeared because everybody's just in booze.
Right.
And if there is a dance floor, it's probably filled with people who are staring at somebody who's DJing or performing and not really dancing. And if they're dancing, it's offbeat. That's another thing I noticed is nobody has rhythm anymore. Not nobody, but like, it's crazy that like, this is the craziest thing. Not only has nightlife developed into this industry that's all based on fear, like the owner is afraid to hire promoters that think outside the box, because he's afraid that he may not get people there that are spending the money that he needs. The promoters are afraid that if they don't deliver the corny people, I don't know if they're corny, but like the people who spend all the money, that they're going to lose their job. The DJs are afraid to be artists and play anything that appeals to them rather than being a jukebox for the guys spending the money. So they're afraid. Everybody's afraid of losing their job for like not doing what they think everybody else wants them to do, which just turns every club into a carbon copy of each other. You hear the same music and you see the same fashion. Everybody's doing the same thing. And so like I DJ'd this party a couple months ago. I kind of stopped DJing as much as I used to, unless it's something that I created or something that I think I'll have a good time at, which is pretty rare these days. So I was playing all these songs and people were just waiting for the hook.
Yeah.
And so it was like a group of zombies standing around, you know, when zombies just stand there and there's no sound, and they're just waiting for like somebody to knock something over so they all go attack them. So they're all just kind of standing there being zombies during the verse. And then as soon as they realize that the chorus is coming, phones come out and they get their Snapchat or their Instagram story ready, and then the chorus hits, and then suddenly the whole room is doing this.
No way.
And like singing the chorus, and then as soon as the chorus is done, they like put their, you know, description and they post it, and then they just go back to being the zombies again. And then the next song, chorus is coming, same thing.
Yeah.
So like, it's crazy to me. I mean, you know, it is what it is, and I accept it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I have to enjoy it or like it, but like, that's why when I go out and I hear DJs play now, it's chorus, 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 chorus. Even songs, they're just like, the verses aren't even really verses anymore. It's just all hooks, because they just want people to like sing along and
mix the chorus into the chorus the next song.
It's just
that's why I sort of admire you for using Serato still, because I was always a vinyl DJ, but then when I was living in San Francisco, I was DJing like Google events and corporate events. This was like 10 years ago or so, and you'd use Serato at that point. It was before CDJs were really, you know, that whole thing had come to life. And whenever I'd do that, people would just come up to me because they'd see the computer. They'd see the glowing Apple logo, and they just assumed you had every song in the world or whatever. And I'd get like a Lady Gaga request, and I was literally playing Lady Gaga at that very moment. You know, it's like, so now that I've eliminated using that process, people are like, I'm like, do you see a computer here? I can't just, you know.
Yeah.
Can't just play that song for
you. Your request stories on Facebook was one of my favorite things to read.
I've there was a certain point before you could get away, you know, with calling out celebrities on the internet. I could. And then came the time when like everyone was just connected.
Right.
And no matter what you said, somehow it got to that person.
Yeah.
So before all of that happened, not just celebrities, but really anybody, I was calling, you remember, I used to do these things called recaps that were like a whole list of all the shitty things that happened in a night that were funny.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, this person asked for this, or this guy offered me Coke. And I was like, you know, no thank you, but like, you might want to, you have a bunch of Coke on your face though, dude. Like, or like, would you play this? There's a million of them, and it was funnier back then when I could say like, you know, Kanye wanted to hear Kanye,
Right.
which I still say it's funny, but like, I could get away with like.
It's on brand though. That's very on brand.
No, it is. It's cool. It's cool. He, you know, there's a
He's consistent.
He's always been consistent, if not anything else. So those are just an extension of the more extensive ones I used to do, where I could get away with like being specific.
Spider was just on the show, and he had a great story about Mariah Carey, and like her security came up to the booth, and it was like, "Mariah's here. You can play the album now." And he was like, "What?"
You know, that happened. Okay, so what we were talking about a few minutes ago about how everything's changed.
Yeah.
I was DJing at this place recently, and they're like, only play this kind of music, which was great. It was like classic hip hop and songs people want to hear, like funk, soul, little disco, oldies, everything from like Mary J. Like, you know, the people in charge are like 90s heads.
Right.
So they were like, don't put anything new on.
Yeah.
Just play this stuff. So I was just playing that stuff, and in walked two huge rappers and one big R&B singer, and sat down, and the girl came running over to me like, stop what you're doing and put on their music.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like a 23-year-old, 24-year-old bar manager or something. Yeah. And I'm like, do you really fucking think people in here are chilling?
Right.
Do you think that they came here to hear their own music, which they're probably inundated with on a daily basis?
Sure.
Look at them. They're just sitting there ordering drinks and having an appetizer. Like,
Yeah.
And she like went and got the manager, and the manager came over, and within 10 minutes I quit. I just left. Like, if you guys want to play their music, you can just put on Spotify, because I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, they put it on. And probably 10 or 15 minutes later, as the story goes, from my friend who runs the place,
They took off.
They were like, "Why are you playing our music? We're just here chilling."
Right.
So it's back to.
Well, it's one thing if it fits the format, right? Sure, like, of course.
It wasn't a club was the thing.
Yeah.
If they walk into a club and people are like this, and they walk in and the lights on them and everybody knows they're there, and you put their shit on and everybody goes crazy, that's cool.
Yeah.
I still don't do that, but if somebody asked me to, I would, because I understand that. We were in a lounge situation where it was like Bill Withers was playing, and they were like immediately put on some brand new hip hop. Right. Like, even if they weren't there, that
it's like the same thing as like if you're DJing before a band, you're like DJing a concert.
Right.
You don't play the band's music before they go on and play the concert.
It's silly. So there's just
the ultimate faux pas.
For sure.
There's just there's a lot of things that changed, and like I notice them on a daily basis. That's why, it goes back to your original question, which includes the not allowing people to take photos in some of these spots. I think adds a lot, and even though younger people take a little longer to understand what to do without their phone, they ultimately end up having a better time. Because they're like, oh, wow, I can experience this real life event for however long I'm in this room, and then I can go back out into the world and do whatever I need to do with my phone. But the phones, I understand it, and I can appreciate it, and I just come from a different time like you do, and I want people to take a moment and appreciate life.
It's just easy to take for granted now too. I know as a kid growing up in the 80s, I was like, I didn't even have an allowance. So if I like pilfer some money out of my mom's drawer or something, or just find enough, money to go get a cassette or whatever, but I'd go and sit in a record, and you go sit and listen to it, and you pull out the sleeve or the insert in the cassette, the CD, and you'd sit there and you wouldn't do anything but just listen to that record. I remember particularly I was like 9 years old, and Peter Gabriel's So came out, and I had to get it. I was just like really feeling the singles off that or whatever, and it got the whole cassette was really cool, and there was like Kate Bush was on it and all this great stuff. And I remember reading the liner notes, and it was like Peter Gabriel on this song is playing a Fairlight, and on this song he's playing a Prophet. And I didn't know what the hell those things were, but I remember like going out and finding out, even as a little kid, what these like instruments were, and being curious of Daniel Lanois, who was the producer, and then seeking out other things that he produced. And I think that's what really informs what how you grow into whatever scene you get into, like, and what people you want to work with.
Was that your first record that you ever bought?
No, I don't think so. No. But I just remember that one being. Remember that being. I think it was kind of like maybe because my mom was listening to a lot of stuff, and it was sort of that adult contemporary 80s thing, but where like Paul Simon, they were all like sort of integrating a lot of world sounds, and WOMAD was happening, and Live Aid and all that. But I don't think so. I want to say like probably the first thing I got was The Unforgettable Fire by U2, back when they were good.
Yeah. It's
been a while.
Although it's funny, my son who's 8 is now like a U2 fan because his kindergarten teacher was playing that free record that came on.
Oh God,
man! In their cut, and he like loves it. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then I've been introducing him to the older stuff.
You like go buy him a copy of War or something.
Yeah, for sure. But what about you?
Just to elaborate a little bit on what he was saying, which relates to what we're ultimately going to talk about. Reading record, reading the liner notes and learning about producers and musicians and labels as a DJ and ultimately a music producer. When you would go out and buy records, right, looking for like beats or sounds, and if you went to a record store where you like knew the dude and he was had a vast musical vocabulary, and you'd go in and say, hey, I need some drum loops. He'd say, well, check this out. And it's like, and you're like, what the fuck is this? He's like, just go listen to it. Yeah. And here's, maybe I need something with like a side stick. Oh, hold on, check this out. Bela Lugosi's dead, what's this? Just go listen to it. And so just in that way of listening to records, skipping through songs, looking for like drum beats, top of songs, we learned about Bauhaus and Can and like all these really amazing alternative or goth bands like Susie, like the beat that like Biggie ultimately took off the Susie record, like all that stuff we learned about, which just opened our mind to all these different genres of music while digging for records, looking for beats and shit, samples,
ESG,
all that stuff.
Liquid,
yeah, man. Like to this day, some of my favorite records were records that I discovered digging and being put on by some dude at a record store who like just wanted to share his knowledge of music with other people. So it was him, and then there was a younger assistant of his that was a hip hop head. So I would get things from the guy who owned the place that just, I had no idea what they were. I remember he gave me a Les McCann record one day, and I was into buying jazz records, and like to this day I remember getting home, putting it on, going like recognizing the samples in it, but also appreciating it for being a beautiful record. I'm like, oh, the Wascals sampled that, or like Master Ace took that. And this is coming from a guy who most likely didn't know that those guys sampled it. It was just like, this has some beats on it, and this is actually a beautiful record. You should check it out. So, I mean,
I know for me, a lot of my favorite records now are songs I discovered as samples.
Absolutely.
And I was digging for what that is, and end up loving the original.
It's just, it just goes back to a different time when people made better music in general. But like,
well, you had to be a world-class musician to get a record out, especially like in the jazz world and whatnot.
Well, yeah.
people were still.
But it really was. I grew up in Milwaukee, and that's where I started promoting shows. And it literally was like there was different kinds of record stores you go to. There's the ones I go where my friends owned. They were these characters called the Noble Brothers. They all looked alike, had these nerdy 60s glasses, had every Tropicalia record, jazz record, disco, funk. Actually, they thought disco was crap, so you could get amazing disco records really cheap.
Yeah.
But then I go to this other store where they were like carrying contemporary stuff, and I remember, I wasn't even really promoting concerts yet, and I went in and my friend turned me on to this group from New York called Antibalas, an Afrobeat group.
Yeah.
And at the time in Milwaukee, this was like 2000, nobody was going to see, you'd only see like indie rock bands, like all the posters in the record stores were black and white, like not even cardstock, and it was just like, it was kind of a depressed time. And I just called up their agent and said, I've heard about this like 15-piece Afrobeat orchestra that you're booking. He's like, yeah, it's going to be $2,000 if you want to bring them. They're actually going to be coming through the Midwest in a few months. And we did it, and we promoted like 15-piece Brooklyn Afrobeat, and had this, full color. Had a guy that worked at Kinkos that like would steal all the stuff for us and let us go in there and design it and print it out because he didn't even have a computer at home at the time. And people went fucking nuts for it, and we just sold the show out.
I want to have the founder of Kinkos on this show because Kinkos was so important to the club scene.
Man, was it?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I remember doing my first event, and like, I had a friend of mine draw up the flyer, Brent Rollins, I'm sure you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I went to Kinkos and made a bunch of color copies, and then made a bunch of black and white copies and whatever. And then you're doing it across the room, and then you come over to the desk and you're like, oh, I made 10 copies. Yeah. Here's my dollar. Yeah. And I made like 500 copies or whatever.
Get away with
we had a racket. We had a racket going for probably 5 or 6 years, and it actually got to the point where the guy that worked there, our friend, was terminated, and they pressed charges against him. And he countersued them and won, and they ended up having to pay him out a ton of money.
Oh, wow.
Which I don't understand how it all ended up working, because I can't tell you how many times they're just in there designing flyers forever, printing out like these massive cardstock posters, full color, huge stack, and he's like, just go.
Well, that guy had a good lawyer.
Oh, well,
but like,
he has good karma for the rest of his life.
But I think there's big chunks of the club scene that just couldn't happen without Kinkos.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean...
Which does, Kinkos doesn't really exist, right? It's like FedEx now.
Right.
Yeah, now you got to put in a credit card. And
the only way to let people know about parties was standing outside some other party and giving them a flyer. Yeah. There wasn't any other...
Oh, yeah, well, I'm sure it's the same with you. When you started, it wasn't like, there was no MySpace, there was no Friendster, none of that crap. You just go to every coffee shop, you go to every record store, you go to every club, every bar, and you pass out flyers. You connect with people and get them convinced that this was where they needed to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good old days.
For sure.
Yeah. But that's also a young person's game. I mean, I can't imagine running around with I mean, we might do a little of that soon.
We might.
No, but I think there was a thing to that, right? That like, it depended on who was the person out there handing you the flyer.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it depended, and if you walked out of a club where you had just had a good time, or in the record store where you trusted them, and you saw their flyers on the window, like there was a shorthand, right, that you were willing to pay attention to the piece of paper that some stranger just handed you, which you wouldn't do. I remember years later, so I started a street team company, and like, we had a client hire us to do some promotion in Vegas. I forget what it was, and so we put a bunch of girls on the strip to hand out flyers, and then we get a call at the end of the day from the leader who was like, no one will take our flyers. And it was because the only people out there doing that were promoting hookers. Right?
Makes sense.
And so so we learned that lesson the hard way, but it was an important lesson that context matters, right? Because if you were out and you had to be in front of the club that was similar enough to the one that you were promoting, right? You can't just go to the the Palace and hand shit out randomly.
Yeah.
When Kilu and I first started DJing together, we did a party called A Train at what became that spot on like Yucca, Goldfingers, whatever that was way back in the day before Goldfingers, and that was Wise. And then Wise designed, he's a big designer now. He designed my logo for my band. Yeah. Still work with that dude. 20 years later.
I like it before when it was just like cut and paste and you were doing collage flyers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So wait, what was the first record you bought?
As a DJ or just in my life?
In life.
I'm going to say, I was just thinking about this a few days ago, and I can narrow it down to one of three. It's either going to be a 45 of 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton.
Yes.
Double Dutch Bus.
Or first 12-inch.
Yeah, that was my first 12-inch for sure. I just don't remember if I bought 9 to 5 or that first. Or I want to say because my mom listened to the Bee Gees a lot, I think I might have bought like a Bee Gees greatest hits or something. Yeah. But if I remember correctly, it was, if I had to really guess, I'd say 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton.
Does 9 to 5 make it into any sets still?
If Steve Aoki's DJing and it's 2005.
Did he really?
I'm sure.
Oh my God.
Right before Jolene.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's a good mix.
Jolene's the obvious one though.
Yeah. I'm partial to 9 to 5.
Yeah. I was like obsessed with that movie as a kid.
I used to just put that,
great.
you couldn't push repeat.
Yeah.
You had to go back to the turntable and start it over again. I'd just sit there and listen to that. And I think maybe Aha, Take On Me was an early record for me. Also, Eben Ozen.
Okay.
He did a song called A-I-O-U. Yeah. That was one of my first records for sure. I remember getting that because I saw the video and I was like, these dudes are trippy.
I'm sure. I don't. Yeah.
And then there's the other A-I-O-U, which I thought was a remix or something.
The Arthur Baker one?
Freeze.
Arthur Baker.
Yeah, there's that one. So I was like, oh wow, this is a different version of it. And this is a different song. It's actually better.
Yeah. That's when I heard IOU, I was just thinking of that.
Yeah. Atomic Dog, I know, was a super early one, 12-inch, that orange and yellow one. Probably a Run DMC. It was right around the time that LL dropped and Run DMC dropped. And there was a place on the corner from where I lived called Odyssey Records in the Valley. They were the first place that it was Music Plus or there for me. So I went there. I remember there being a Run DMC record and one LL Cool J record, and I think those were actually somewhere in there. My first record, Atomic Dog, I remember was the first record I think I discovered without it being from my parents, like a genre. K-Day. Yeah. Well, it was K-Day, and then we used to drive across the country. I would drive with my family, and I had a tape recorder that picked up the radio, and I would just record off the radio wherever we were, and it was mostly just AM Gold, But I remember going through New York at that time, and it was the first time I remember hearing hip hop and Atomic Dog, and I remember because I recorded the hour we drove through New York, or a couple hours. And when I remember getting home and listening to it and just freaking out about Atomic Dog, I can't even believe how amazing this is. And
that song was already probably a few years old at that point.
Probably, yeah, for sure it was. It was 81 or something. I'm pretty old, so it might have been new. But I do remember Sucka MCs was on that.
For sure. And
Atomic Dog. And then I because I didn't know what it was, so I didn't. There was no way to find out what Atomic Dog was. I just was and then I saw the video, and I was like, oh shit.
There was this episode of the damn Al Bundy show, Married with Children, where he's running to record stores all over the city, humming a tune and asking the guy behind the counter what it is. And it's
what was the song?
It was
that's amazing.
I don't know what it was, but That was like one of the early episodes, but like we all had that experience.
Yeah, because you couldn't figure out how, otherwise we'd wait maybe to hear it on the radio.
Totally, and hope that they said, and they'd be like, oh, another 12 in a row.
Yeah.
No, like they wouldn't say the title.
Yeah.
Whatever.
A record that informed so much for me was, I'm just probably a couple of years younger than Adam, but it was Neil Young Trans, because my mother was like a massive Neil Young fan. So I just didn't really have the money to go out and buy records or anything. Yeah. But that was, I'd sit around and listen to like all the old Neil Young and Crazy Horse records she had, but she just happened to have Trans too, because it was like 1982 or 83 at that point. I remember putting that record on and being like, what the hell is going on? Just like, you don't even understand. It's like the drum machines and synthesizers, and he's singing through the vocoder and all that, which, like later on when I started, because when I first started hearing hip hop, it was like Beastie Boys and Run DMC and stuff like that. But later on, then you started hearing Africa Bambaataa and, all the freestyle electro stuff and whatnot, Nucleus and then you really like started to understand, there was just really that peak period around 82, 83 when the 808 came out and the whatever Roland vocoder they were all using, and it was everyone was trying it out. Phil Collins was using the drum machines and the vocoder on In the Air Tonight, 81. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah. So how do we get from that? So you have this history of hip hop clubs, and
thanks.
Obviously She Wants Revenge. And then I know you've been doing Cloak and Dagger Club for a while.
2 years.
2 years? So where did the idea for a festival come from, and why a Cloak and Dagger festival, not some other festival?
So the idea, for just a quick history, which will lead us to the festival.
Yeah.
Cloak and Dagger came from an idea based on Giorgio's, which is the disco night idea, which doesn't allow photos.
Right. It's my favorite night, by the way.
Thanks.
Whenever I can drag my ass out.
Yeah, so there'd be people who'd come there who hate disco, but love, like a few of my friends that are kind of celebrities in the dark kind of gothy industrial, let's say, world, or rock, whatever, who hate disco. They love that they can go somewhere and not be bombarded with like people taking photos of them, because we protect them. And so that's where the idea first started, where I was like, I wish that there was like a goth club or something where like dudes like that can go, like Manson or something, can go and actually hear music that he's into and just kick it and not worry about people harassing them, protect them from like super fans, or someone finds out he's there, or whatever, knows he goes there, they'll just try and stalk him. So the original idea came from, I wonder if I could create something like that, but then I realized, like, I made a mixtape, just kind of trying to wrap my head around what I would play, and I was experimenting with like 9 Inch Nails instrumentals and like Nas acapellas, or Biggie acapella, or whatever, Rihanna even, or vice versa, Depeche Mode acapella over Daft Punk, and whatever it was. And I was like, and they sounded good, and there was a through line somewhere in there. And so I was like, I don't really like to go to goth clubs. I mean, for lack of a better word, I don't even understand what the word goth really means, but like, we'll just say goth because everybody thinks they understand what it means. I wish I could go somewhere where I didn't hear the same thing every time I go. You can pretty much bank on what you're going to hear, because a lot of those clubs are just stuck in the 90s. And they never really branch out unless there's a breakthrough artist who has a big hit, or their personal preference of like some things you may not know about, or whatever the case may be. In general, 80% of what you hear is going to kind of be the same thing. So I thought, I love Wu-Tang Clan, and it's dark. I love all, 9 Inch Nails. I love Depeche Mode, but I also love Motown. There are Motown songs where the lyrics are dark. and sad. And the sonics of the song.
Which one comes to mind?
There's like a song that I always play called "My Past Just Crossed My Future," which is an amazing song by the Four Tops.
Okay.
In their 70s kind of funk phase, which is talking about how the guy was a fuck up when he was a kid and did all this fucked up shit, and now he's grown up and he's watching his kid do the same thing. It's dark, but it's funk.
Yeah.
The point was that there are dark aspects to all genres of music, even classical, jazz, anything. There's a darker side to everything.
Sure.
Why not try to imagine a place where you could get away with playing Depeche Mode into the Gravediggers or something? You know, I didn't know if it was going to work, but I just knew that, like, I would want to hear all that shit together.
Yeah.
I realized that, like, there's less hip hop heads than there are the other side of things that go out now.
Yeah.
I just adjust.
Yeah.
But it worked, you know, in that first people were like, Biggie isn't dark, man. I'm like, he has a song called Suicidal Thoughts, dude. Like, if that's not dark, I don't know what is. It's dark. And so people were like, I don't get it. And I would say, just come. Just come. You'll understand when you get there. And then by the end of the night, they're like, okay, now I get it.
So I have a personal question. You know, you're kind of a quiet dude, and, you know, you write publicly a lot on Facebook about depression, about substance abuse, about, you know, and yet your career is like marked by this confidence that you can give people something that they don't know they want and that it'll work. How's that happen? Because no one would sit around going, oh, there's a market for this club, like all the promoters and venue owners and shit that we're talking about. Not one of them would ever have conceived of this idea.
I made a decision very early on, which kind of got me shut out from a lot of LA circles of DJs and promoters, where I just was like, this is what I like. I'm just going to go for it. And when I saw in the very beginning, even in high school, I just realized that I have good taste. Then I realized very quickly that I know how to read a room. Then I realized very quickly that when I trust my instincts, it always works. Except when I was getting hammered, sometimes it didn't work. But like
instincts are tough to keep in.
Yeah, when I was drunk, I thought it was working, but when I would go back and actually like listen to the recording or try and remember that night, it probably didn't work.
Yep.
But it's what I tell a lot of the younger kind of DJs that are coming up who have enough, you know, who are seeking out advice even, and not just being a carbon copy of everybody else. It's just, it's an art form to me. That's all. That's what it is that I'm an artist, and I don't say that to be pretentious. I'm just saying that in the truest sense of being an artist, when you need to express yourself, at the time, it was the only way I could. Let people know, like, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I like, and this is a picture I'm going to paint for you, right? That has a beginning, a middle, and an end, so it takes you on a trip. So people would walk out having had highs and lows based on the music, based on decisions I was making, based on music that I personally liked, putting in some kind of order that made sense to me. You know what I mean? So, like, at a certain point, I realized that it was the easiest way for me to speak to people. Because, like you said, like, if I wasn't DJing, I was in the corner somewhere, probably hiding out or doing something I shouldn't be doing or whatever. But, like, the confidence that you mentioned, I don't know if that's the right word, but I appreciate it, just comes from, I think, having a lifetime of people appreciating what I do and letting me know by continuing to come to the things I do and continuing to hire me to DJ their events or whatever. So, and if there's another thing I know, it's that in Los Angeles, over the course of my career, one thing I have noticed is when something isn't being provided for people in certain ways, in terms of music and clubs, if you give it to them, they'll come, if it's a good idea. So I do know that over the years, like, the most successful clubs were things that just weren't happening.
Right.
You know, you just kind of, if you look at the landscape and you go, this is what people have, this is what people are offered, I know that if I do this thing, there's that many people that want to come to it. And if they don't, it'll only happen once or twice. And then I'll move on and do something else. But like, part of the idea of Cloak and Dagger was just, I know that there are hip hop people that appreciate more than just hip hop. I know that there are goth people that appreciate more than just goth, whether they know it or not. Because one of the most common comments I get is, it's amazing to look around the room and see some girl doing a spiderweb dance to like the Ministry or whatever. And then I put on like, I admit I play Toxic by Britney Spears sometimes because it's a dark song. The lyrics are dark and girls like it. But to go from like, sometimes Tear You Apart, She Wants Revenge, and Toxic, because they're both up tempo and then 140 or something, they blend. Watching a girl do this in all black and total Susie makeup, go into Britney Spears and freak out, it's such an amazing moment to capture every night. And it just is a testament to the fact that genres span broader than the audience that you imagine it to be. And I think we just live in a world now where it can't exist the way it used to. It shouldn't, where everything is like that. You know, you go to this kind of club, go to that kind of club. You know, there are the girls that like fancy themselves goth and just dress in all black because it's a fashion thing. And we force everybody to wear all black when they come. But like, it's amazing, you know, and the festival just stems from that. You know, again, thank you for the compliment, but like, it's really just figuring out, how can I do what I do in a way that I'm not repeating myself. One thing we said in She Wants Revenge is, if we continue to make music, let's do our best to never do something we've already done. And I've kind of always subscribed to that as a DJ, where there are mixes that I've been doing for 20 years that are just good. But in general, I think anybody, any kind of artist, at a certain point, you just, maybe not even at a certain point, you just never really want to do the same thing twice. So,
sort of how you separate yourself too, as, I mean, when you talk about DJ as an artist, is that's become, I think, so convoluted, particularly.
Of course.
You know, you think about like Larry Levan at the Paradise Garage or something, he would go drop a can 12-inch or some weird, you know, crazy rhythm track, and then, you know, down, you know, was like, disco was you could call it a lot of things. It was dance music. You know, hip hop was samples of disco and rock and funk and how many other genres and whatnot.
The ultimate genre
So
blender.
it's funny that, you know, you think you could make it as a DJ. I mean, I think the DJs that are successful that just go out and, you know, play like, you know, at a club like Sound or something that's more like just like a house or a techno thing, whatnot. You have to make tracks to be able to go and do that. If you're going to be a DJ that's like from the school that I think we both came from, you have to be like, you really have to make an art form out of what you're mixing and what you're bringing to the table. Absolutely. And all the genre blending and whatnot.
So you guys are partners in the festival, and I know it's Restless Nights, Spaceland, you,
Cloak and Dagger.
Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah.
Tell me about the partnership.
So
why are you guys the right partners for each other?
So the original idea was to just do a 2-year anniversary party where my band would play, and we have members from a bunch of other bands that I play there that attend all the time. So the idea was like we could do a secret show and have a couple of the other bands who are members play with us and just do like a surprise 2-year anniversary show. And then I called my agent, Pete Anderson at APA, who's like been a really amazing agent for She Wants Revenge and now other things. I hit him up and I said, do me a favor and just do a little bit of research and let me know how many other festivals exist in this world that are dark but also add other genres, other elements to them. And like a week or two later, he came back and said, there isn't anything like that. There may be dark festivals that have like one hip hop guy in it or one other thing or a couple, but most of them in general are like all industrial, all ambient, all techno, all house, all one thing. And so the original idea was like, why don't we try and do a festival where we can have some hip hop, we can have some kind of like maybe dark pop element or dark house or dark DJ, gas lamp, or somebody who knows music enough to be able to curate a set like that, and have some industrial stuff and have some goth stuff and new stuff that's dark and maybe doesn't fall into any of those genres necessarily, but is dark in their aesthetic or their sonic or whatever. And so he was like, dude, let's just do it. And I said, okay, well, I can't do it. I can't do it. Who do we talk to? And he said, well, we should go speak with Spaceland, and then we should go speak with Restless Nights, because he works with both companies. And it turns out that Brian and I worked together in San Francisco. He can tell you the story, but I think She Wants Revenge was one of the first bands he booked at Mezzanine in San Francisco. Cool. So we met way back in the day.
12 years ago.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
And, after meeting with Spaceland and sitting with Brian, I think we all quickly realized that, like, based on the strengths of each party, that it was kind of the perfect combination.
Well, we were already in the beginning stages of doing this.
That's right.
But really? Adam had his own.
Yeah.
He had the club to bring the table and his own vision, which they had kind of asked me, like, why don't we put together a gothy festival or something, because the stuff they'd always hear me sitting around listening to at the office or whatnot, and so I was already sort of in the planning stages for it. But then I encountered his agent Pete at the Desert Days Festival, which was about exactly a year ago, out in Joshua Tree, and we talked a little bit, and then Adam and I met like the next week, and we brought our lists together of who we wanted to book.
Yeah.
And our lists were
identical.
like, there was like 75% crossover on it. The crossover was so strong, we were just like, okay, let's just.
That's cool.
And we got along well, and we're like, let's do it.
Yeah. Are there things going into a partnership like this? Are there things that you guys know you have to watch out for to sort of keep from hating each other, or keep from, the whole thing crashing down?
It's probably just keeping us from hating everyone else.
Yeah.
I think we're fine. Yeah.
I think once you've been in a relationship, whether it's personal or business, and you understand that thing about picking battles and and how everybody has their own vision and how everybody has their own agenda ultimately, and once you learn how to kind of work with other people, I think in general, it makes having partnerships like this much easier. And I think that, like, not to say that like I've encountered anything working with these guys that has been negative at all.
Yeah.
But I think that, like I said, everybody's really good at what they do. And so, and we all share common vision, which is great. And, Brian understands the music as much as I do.
Well, we definitely have similar roots too, because when I started collecting, it was all soul, funk, and hip hop and disco and world music and whatnot. And I was very in that. My mindset was very much in that DJ game. One of my mentors was this guy named Old Man Malcolm, who I'm sure Adam probably knows, and he was in the band Citizen King, which is probably a similar trajectory as Adam as well. But that was like the biggest band in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
They had a hit song called Better Days. But he was very much like, he was like playing a Kraftwerk song, playing a Babada song, playing a New Order song, playing, Joy Division, Susie and the Banshees, and then, he'd be deep into like a rare Saphir track or something, and it was like...
That's cool.
And that's where I came from. So once Adam sort of brought that vision to me and I went to the club and started to see what he was doing, it really made a lot of sense for me. Because I've never been... I'm not from Los Angeles, and I've never... Even the first few years I lived here, I've been here 7 years now, I barely crossed Western. I lived in Los Feliz, and then now I live in Echo Park, and I was booking the Echo and the Regent downtown and all that, and it was very much a different scene. So it was kind of a good reminder, eye-opening. I mean, obviously, so much has changed now. Now we just jump into an Uber. We're like, well, before you had to get your friends together, get in a car, make a big thing about it.
Absolutely.
Someone got a DUI, $10,000 later, you're not going back to Hollywood.
Right.
So it was kind of cool to like experience this whole new, kind of awakening for me. And to be totally honest, like this is the first year of the festival. We kind of had to rush a lot of it, and there's a lot of things we didn't get to book this year.
That we'll book next year.
That will really kind of, we're extremely happy with the lineup, but I think that there's some things that will really, people will be able to identify even more strongly with the Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, it wasn't a fully realized vision, just based on time. Like, once we actually all came to the conclusion that we were going to work together and said yes, we were just under the gun as far as time was concerned. So a lot of the things we went after initially were already booked.
But what we're excited for is that we see this as a long-term vision, and we're going to keep growing it and really make it into something special.
Yeah, so talk about that, and if you think long-term, what does success look like?
I mean, I know that I define success maybe in a different way than Brian does and Mitchell at Spaceland does. I know that for myself personally, I've never really been, it's never been a financial thing. It's just been like a creative, if people respond positively to a creative effort that I make, it's successful. So I think even now it's successful in that we get messages from people all over the world saying like, this is one of the greatest lineups I've ever seen. Nice. Unfortunately, I can't make it to the show because I live in Germany, and we're like, well, maybe we'll bring it to Germany. So like, I think success, we've already accomplished success, I think. But I think, in other terms, I think it could become more successful in that we'll do a second year, which will be more of a realized vision for all of us. And also we're toying with doing multiple cities, multiple countries. Like, who knows, stranger things have happened. And it's really just, we're DJs, and so doing a festival is just like DJing a set in that you're just curating music for a crowd.
It's entire night, entire weekend, It's
the same thing.
I think we have similar goals, and I mean, obviously, it'd be wonderful, down the road to make a bunch of money doing what you love.
Sure. Yeah.
But we're both older. I've been a concert promoter for 18 years. I just left my full-time job this year to work on Restless Nights and work on the festival and whatnot. And we just want to throw an awesome party and build this into something that's going to be special for people. There's no ambition beyond that right now.
And that's also to further answer your question about success. I've never approached what we're doing from their side of things. I've always been in the band that gets booked for the festival.
Or the DJ,
Or the DJ. But what I do, not only do I respect and appreciate everything they do on a daily basis to like make that shit happen. It's a lot of work.
Sure.
But, not just the logistics, but like the effort that we need to put in to make sure that every single person who comes has a good time and sees the bands that they want to see, and there's no bullshit, because as we all know, a lot of times first-year festivals are just like a nightmare.
It's giving birth to a baby.
Yeah, they're working it out.
So I think,
in front of a painting crowd.
Exactly. So, I've done clubs before where night one was a nightmare, and it may never have gone further than that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think the goal to be successful in what we're doing is also not only to curate something that we believe in, from the music to the aesthetics of it, but also the success comes from like walking away once it's done and having people say like, that was great. I appreciate everything Brian does. Like, he worked so hard on curating and booking the bands, getting all those bands to be a part of it. But like, now we really listen to everything everybody says. I know as an artist, I have to blow it all off because some people like what you do and some people don't. Of course. And you just have to chalk it up. Because back in the day, I'd be like, no, fuck you. My band's awesome. You suck.
You'll be the first one to get the copy of my book that I've been archiving emails for.
Oh, nice.
Forever. Just the horrible emails you get from agents and managers and whatnot. I mean, it is a thankless business.
I'm sure.
In so many ways, but the reward is when you put on a really great production. And I mean, this particularly is like, we're working on the schedule constantly. It's just like, I'm so fucking excited to see, 30 artists plus that I've like really love. Yeah. I mean, there's not a single artist on the bill that wasn't handpicked by us. Yeah. We didn't, we're not doing a Coachella thing or any of these other festivals where they're, horse trading and compromising and whatnot. We booked the artists we wanted to book.
What's been the hardest part?
I mean, you getting the word out, just getting people engaged in it. That right now there is festival, I think, overload going on.
For sure. What do you? I know you said there's not a festival like this, but what are the festivals you think of that kind of inspired you guys, whether they're favorites or there's elements that you wanted to bring from?
I went to a festival in Houston, Day for Night. They just announced their lineup, I think last week. 9 Inch Nails is headlining.
Cool.
I went last December to that festival. Aphex Twin was the headliner amongst some other. Bjork Digital did her big debut there.
Nice.
And they had it in old Houston post office and then the parking lot. So there was a stage or two outside and then 3 or 4 levels to the post office. But they did all these really incredible light and sound installations and whatnot. You get really lost in these grids of lasers and mirrors and all sorts of stuff. And I was pretty inspired by that. I just met the guy that runs the festival last week, actually.
Nice.
For me, I think I got. We have a lot we talked about that we're going to do in the future, years in the future. But film, cinema stuff, and whatnot, and really integrating not just being like an experience where you're just watching bands play, where there's just like there's so much more to it.
Yeah. And
that's what you do at the club too.
There's an immersive side of the club, which not everybody knows what immersive theater is. I think now it's more popular than ever, so people are starting to figure out what it is, and they're starting to go to what they call immersive events. But part of what we do at Cloak and Dagger, the club, which we don't advertise, and you would only know if you come to the club, and on top of that, you're chosen to be incorporated into it. If you come to the club, someone may come grab you and pull you into some other room and sit you down in front of somebody who asks you some questions, and you might be blindfolded. You might have to make a choice. And based on what you say, how you act, and what you choose in that situation leads you to a number of second experiences, which again, based on what you say or do in those, may lead you to another one, and there's a story. It's all part of a big story. And that happens every week at the club.
Wow.
And you would only know it if I'm on like a show talking about it, or you come to the club and you experience it, which is great. And we're going to incorporate that into the festival because there's no festival that does that. And so, I mean, I think there are immersive aspects to some festivals, but I don't know to what degree. But I do know that we have this girl named Annie Lesser, who's getting a lot of love right now because of her immersive experiences in Los Angeles. They've been really successful, and she's been one of the writers at our club since day one.
Nice.
As far as the immersive story goes. Yeah. And it's funny, most people hear immersive and blindfolds and stuff, and they're like, you have a sex club? Like, what goes on? And like, the dudes, of course, are a lot
I did notice there's a safe word on your membership application.
There is a safe word. You know, like, for liability, you know, we just need to know everybody's, because we know when we're pulling somebody into some situation, we know what their safe word is, and we remind them before going in, just in case you put a bag over somebody's head and they're claustrophobic.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Not that we bag people's heads, but like there could, you know, one of the things that we spend most of our time doing is making a safe space for women.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
And so in that, one of the rules at the club is to respect everybody's private space. And if any girl ever has a problem with anybody, they're meant to come talk to me or my partner, Michael Patterson, and let us know immediately, and we handle it. Mm-hmm. We just want everybody to...
Has that happened?
Yeah. I mean, not so much because we curate the night.
Sure.
So, but sometimes people bring a guest and we can't control that.
So tell me, like, you know, on a base level, we're in the hospitality business.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, there's that customer's always right sort of mantra that pervades that business. And yet, you know, you put a lot of rules on people. You have to dress a certain way. There's no cameras. You have to fill out an application and be accepted. You have to choose a safe word. There's all this stuff, right, that you make people jump through hoops. As a business person, why is that a good idea?
I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I know that back in the day when I would go to like Hartwell's clubs, Deluxe, and they weren't letting anybody in.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
so there were rules. They just didn't tell you what the rules were.
You didn't know what they were. Sometimes you'd get in there, it'd be like 4 people in there. And you're like, why is there 200 people outside? So I know just from living in Los Angeles that exclusivity goes a long way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's what legends are. I mean, the whole legend of Studio 54, the techno club in Berlin, Berghain. Yeah, I mean, people, like, the doorman just decides he doesn't like the way you look. Right. You might actually be the fucking coolest dressed person in the line. It's just like, not tonight, you know?
Yeah.
It's where it stems from.
But I think that Adam's honed in on something. I mean, it's, you know, all those rules have worked really well for those people, and it's worked really well for the club. Mm-hmm. I'm always blown away how many people are in there, and you know, there's a you know, it's an intimate space and whatnot, and there's always,
do you think there's room for other businesses to like think that way?
Which way? The exclusive part or the rules part?
Either one.
I mean, you know, you look at like a Soho House. Yeah. It's members only. They have rules.
Yeah.
I mean, there are business models.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, ours is based just as much on aesthetics as it is on anything else. So everybody has to wear all black, but I think that's cool because I think that like people need rules sometimes and appreciate them and go out of their way. Like I know that like I talk to every girl that comes, you know, not everyone, but most of them, and they're like, they love going shopping every week and figuring out a new outfit to wear that's all black or new black shoes. It just really gives them an excuse to go shopping and get something new. Sure. But I mean, I can only speak for myself and my club and our festival, but we haven't really gotten a lot of people complaining about the festival. You have to wear all black. The festival. Yeah. No one's really complaining about it. A few people, but we kind of joke about it all the time.
The funny thing is those people probably would have worn all black anyway.
Yeah, goth people love to
We're going to let people, we're sort of giving people somewhat of an option. But, you know, like right now we're saying the dress code is all black, but you already know that. Yeah. The one thing you're seeing is like, you know, his club is a members only club, which I think is, you know, like that's not what we're doing with the festival. Right. The festival is anybody can come. We're doing some special stuff for the members. Yeah. But I do think it's executed really well for me because I know personally I don't like to stand in line. I don't like to wait around, hope to be on a list for something, whatnot. There's no line at Cloak and Dagger. There's no, you know, like
'cause
it's
you've done
already
that
been worked
beforehand.
out in advance, and so you show up and you know what you're getting, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. No,
And
a
it's
great
not for
insight.
everybody, you know. And that's what it is.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I have to get through a lightning round before we get kicked out of here.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask both of you, what's your favorite city to travel to?
Wow. I like to go to Bangkok.
Nice.
Been there a few times.
Yeah, I've never been.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Tokyo.
Yeah. That's that's probably number 2.
Yeah.
It's just, it's like being on another planet in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Just-
Tokyo's probably the coolest city I've been to.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. Who's your favorite DJ?
Alive or dead, does it matter? I mean, probably, Larry Levan would have been,
Yeah.
live. Nicky Siano still going. He's awesome. DJ Harvey.
I love hearing Jazzy Jeff play.
Oh yeah.
I'd
he's so amazing.
say Jeff.
Yeah.
He's just solid and creative and never really repeats himself and has a great musical vocabulary. So whenever I get the opportunity to see him play, Harvey's amazing.
Yeah. Jeff's our number 1 answer on this show.
Jeff's the
Although
best.
your name comes up.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's nice. It's good to hear.
I was gonna say that, but it just didn't want to sound like I was kissing his ass.
Yeah, that wouldn't be right. What's the last great book you've read?
I read this book. It's called sapiens.
Yeah. Been hearing about
Harari
Yeah.
is the author, an Israeli guy. It's just incredible. Just kind of the birth of how we beat out the Neanderthals versus all the other
Cool.
humanoid races on the planet and whatnot. It's just a kind of a mind-blowing book.
Yeah.
I just reread House of Leaves.
Oh, I don't know it.
It's a difficult read
Yeah.
because you'll understand what I mean when you see it. It's just the way it's formatted is crazy. It's not just typical book.
Yeah.
Some of the pages spiral
Oh, wow.
inwards. Some just have 3 words on them. Some are. It's just different
I
size
love
fonts.
books like that.
It's a horror book.
Okay.
But it's just the guy just said, "Fuck rules.
Yeah.
I'm gonna format each page or each group of pages in whatever fucking way I want."
Yeah.
So in that way, it's really like a piece of art
That's
before you
great.
even get to the story.
Love it.
So I read it when it first came out, and I kind of forgot about it, and I came across it and I reread it.
I love revisiting books.
Yeah,
I've read
sure.
it like
It's
20
great.
years ago,
It's
so
great.
it's fun.
Yeah. Speaking of revisiting, what movie have you seen the most in your life?
To Live and Die in L.A.
I love that
Okay.
movie.
William Friedkin.
Yeah.
It's not his best film. Sorcerer or Exorcist are probably his best films, but it's just so has that, encapsulates that style and
Wang Chung.
the Wang Chung soundtrack, early Willem Dafoe villain.
Oh,
and
cool.
the whole movie just looks like a Patrick Nagel painting.
It does.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah,
Nice. Adam?
Blade Runner.
Really?
yeah, that's a close one.
Yeah.
Close second.
Blade Runner. I mean, Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
Probably the first half of my life was Star Wars. Second half would be Blade Runner. Yeah, because there's a lot of different versions of it. The
Yeah.
soundtrack's amazing, but there's an interesting conversation that Ridley Scott, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg were having
At the time, yeah.
hidden in their movies.
I don't know.
They were,
So-
they were making them for each other, sort of.
If you, I mean, there's a million blogs I'm sure that you could find online
I think I've
that
heard one.
discuss a lot of that stuff,
Yeah.
but like, they were tipping their hats to each other. Like Alien and Blade Runner have a lot of similarities. When the ship takes off in Alien, it blinks purge, which in Blade Runner, when they get in that little cop car and it's taking off, it's purge. There's one frame where on top of one of the buildings is the Millennium Falcon. If you,
Oh, no way.
if you look.
Oh, man. That's cool.
But back in the day, you couldn't freeze it.
Right. Sure.
For me, it was Aliens. I saw it in the
Oh,
theater
yeah.
when I was 9
Me
years
too.
old. But subsequently, the director's cut, James Cameron's like full, like, it's another 17, 20 minutes or something that's added on. It's just unfucking believable. Perfect film.
That's cool. Tell me one decision that changed your life forever.
To follow my instincts instead of what family members and other people around me wanted me to do with my life.
Was there a moment when you're conscious of that decision?
Mm-hmm. I went to the beach. I had a few conversations with a few people I trusted. I was on a very specific trajectory to do something not very creative.
What was it?
I was math major.
Okay.
And I wanted to make music and DJ. And I spoke with a few people who I used both sides of my brain. And at the time I had a few family members and a few close friends that kind of have the same capability of being creative, but also doing math or whatever it is they do. And I was just curious, like, if they had to do it all over again, would they have chosen the path that they chose, which was not very a creative path? Yeah, man, like, you know, I got the car and a wife and a house.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, but are you happy? Well, you know, I make all this money and, yeah, but you're not answering my question. Like, are you happy? Like, are you, is what you do in life, I understand what you're saying, but like, did you make the right decision ultimately? No one's around, you can tell me. And they were like, you know, if I had to do it all over again, you know, I love my kid.
Right.
I would never want to not have my kid, but I might have chosen something else to do because I don't get to satisfy that part of my heart, I guess, was the answer most of them gave. So yeah, I went to the beach one day and I just said, this is what I want to do. And I've had a lifetime of serving other people, really, making other people have a good time and enjoy.
You don't have to go to the office every day.
I have to go to the office. Never. I did have a few jobs in the beginning, but I never had another job.
Brian, what's the decision that changed your life?
I think it's something similar. It's that, you know, it's just like, you know, when I was in school, I was studying anthropology and psychology. I was thinking of going to film, all that stuff, and you never was totally sure what I wanted to do. But I always, when I was like, you know, 13 years old, my mom bought me my first guitar, and that was a huge impetus for me. I think she took me to my first concert, which was Neil Young and Crazy Horse with Sonic Youth and Social Distortion.
Wow. Complete the sentence. I don't have talent, I have blank.
Could you repeat that?
I don't have talent, I have blank.
I don't even know what talent means. I have you know, is it one word?
No.
Or does it matter?
No, it can be
It's a really good question,
you can write a
Josh.
book.
It's a great question.
I saw that from Henry Rollins. I just want
No, it's a great.
to give credit.
It's a great question. I have experience, a lifetime of it.
It's good.
Have a personality.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That'll take you a long way. So, not math. What other career would you want if you knew you couldn't fail, outside of music?
Sushi chef.
Badass.
I just want to sit there and talk with people and make them the best sushi they've ever had. I could do that.
That's an amazing talent.
Yeah, it is. It's an art form for sure, and it's hard to find.
Yeah. So if I worked for each of you, what's something I would hear you say over and over?
Go fuck yourself.
Okay.
Fuck him. Fuck
Yeah.
them. I don't know.
Well, so you're like a motivational book.
Yeah, I'm like the.
That's another good question. I'd probably say I'd probably say, when somebody emails you, it's important to get back to them within 24 hours. Mm-hmm. I'd probably say that a lot.
Not everybody knows that, and that's a great.
That's a good point. There's just a lot of etiquette that hasn't still been defined in the new era we're living. I'm joking, of course. I'm going to compile this book of like.
Yeah.
I got an email regarding Cloak and Dagger last week from an agent that we're working with, and he told me to chill out. Mm-hmm. And that was. I mean, I have.
That always helps you chill out.
Yeah, it always, I mean, it's just so important to be decent to the people you work with, and
it's etiquette. It's another lost art form, but I think it's one of the most important ones in business. Is to just, and I learned that all from Brian Rabin. Like a lot of that kind of stuff. Just working with him for the last almost 5 years now, doing Giorgio's. Mm-hmm. He operates at such a high level in what he does in business that I learned all that stuff from him. Like he would yell at me all the time. Not yell, but like, hey man, like somebody emailed you. Like you got to get back to them. Yeah. You waited a week. Like that's just not acceptable, man. Right. So I learned that, and it does. People are like, thanks for the quick response. I'm not used to that.
Absolutely. So how does everybody find you guys in the festival?
Well, there's you can go to restlessnights.com/cloak.
Cool.
Adam's website is xcloakanddaggerx.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we're out there. We're everywhere.
Awesome.
Find us on our respective Facebooks or Instagrams, and we're gonna be running a lot of giveaways this week, and
cool.
Some fun stuff. Nice. So just keep an eye out for it. Yeah.
She Wants Revenge plays Saturday, and
cool.
Gaslamps playing one night. We may have a surprise we're going to throw in the mix.
There might be a couple of surprises thrown in there.
Anyway.
Yeah, he also announced on the show today, Annie Lesser is going to be doing Immersive.
Yeah, the Immersive. It's a big thing.
That's the first we've spoken of it. So
she's amazing. She has all these things planned for people that are just going to be walking around thinking that they're just going to see another band. Yeah. Will be like just brought into some really cool kind of little theater. It's really theater, immersive, where they're like, what just happened?
Yeah, it's cool about these old Broadway theaters is they have tons of little secret rooms and layers, and so it's pretty cool.
Thanks for having us, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for coming,
you, Josh.
Man. I'm excited for you guys. Yeah. Can't wait to see it, and you'll have to come back and let us know about next year.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yo, that was our interview with Adam 12, Brian Tarney. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you listened to or where you traveled or what you think of the show or who you want to hear on next. You can hit us at Rebel Radio Net on Twitter, Facebook. You can always leave a comment on iTunes. And most importantly, come back next week for more Rebel Radio. Peace.